Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to be here with you. Since I saw you last, I have been in multiple cities, a little tired tonight, and I don't know if you recognize where I am, but I have recorded from here before, way back in August. So since I saw you last, I've been in Orlando, West Palm Beach, Pensacola, Austin, San Antonio, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and now I'm in London, Ontario, Canada. So really great to be coming to you from all those places. And as I shared before, I've been working on speaking presentations and sharing information about menopause and menopausal changes. And I shifted gears over the weekend, and also for this week, I'm working on training in so that I can continue to train effectively in the area of obstetrics and obstetrical risk management, essentially patient safety and putting patients at the center of their care on the obstetrical labor and delivery unit. So it's a company I've worked with since 2004, and I'm super passionate about. So watch my Facebook page for information and more stuff about that. I'm going to be here most of the week, actually, training with this obstetrical program. So lots of fun stuff happening. So I'm with you today to continue on our anti-cancer block, and I'm actually going to dig into chapter 4 today. So in keeping with what I've shared with you, our wellness leaders, your wellness leaders, our wellness leaders are very, very busy people. So we are having trouble pinning Dr. Stacy Cooper down, but she is working really hard to bring chapter 3 and 5, Breaking Bad News, and a little bit more information about really how important it is to live our life before we get a bad diagnosis to the very, very fullest that we possibly can. And also a little bit about how the author of the Anticancer, A New Way of Life, Dr. Servan-Schreiber, that we've been talking about, a little bit more about how he managed when he was first diagnosed with cancer. So just sharing that, as we know, 1 in 2 people will be diagnosed with cancer. It's hard to even imagine those numbers. In a lot of cities, it's 1 in 2. And 1 in 4 dying of cancer. So we're continuing our anti-cancer block, but I'm skipping right over to chapter 4, and I'm going to do the first section of chapter 4. We are the Empowered Women Circle, here to strengthen your body, elevate your mind, and nurture your soul. We are a wellness movement for women, and as you can tell, my cold is still not gone. I'm still fighting this and hoping that you can hear me okay. So making sure if you have a medical health or mental health issue or any concern, you see your own healthcare provider. You know that by now. We're talking about cancer, and we don't want to give the impression that we are really specifically preventing or curing cancer in a way that has been scientifically proven so. For example, if eating broccoli prevented cancer, we would have to take a huge number of people, feed half of them broccoli, and the other half of them no broccoli, and follow them for the length of time it would take for the no broccoli group, let's say, or the broccoli group to develop a cancer. Then we'd have to look at the numbers in the broccoli group and the numbers in the no broccoli group and decide that we'd actually made a difference by feeding one of them broccoli. And that would make the assumption, of course, that there were no other differences in the other group. For example, do the broccoli group also maintain a more physical, active exercise routine? You may think that maybe broccoli eaters might do that. So you need to control for those kinds of cofactors, those types of confounders, they're called. So those types of things that would complicate the study results. We haven't done those studies, but we are sharing with you what we think to be true and what we can see trending in the information that we have available. And really, we're going through the book that Dr. Servan-Schreiber wrote about his anti-cancer story. And he's got a lot of phenomenal references in there. But I just want to be sure that you understand, we're not saying that an alternative approach will cure or even really for sure prevent. We think it will prevent potentially chronic disease, and we know cancer is a chronic disease. And we have good literature to show that specific things may have an impact on your health. But we want to be clear that we are never recommending that you take on a lifestyle change as a way to treat an actual disease that you have. You absolutely need to see your healthcare provider. Excuse me. And you absolutely need to work with a healthcare provider that's going to work with you and be open-minded and help to integrate all of the conventional medical treatments with some of the integrative approaches around wellness and lifestyle that we know are so good for your body. So making sure that you understand the limitations of what we're providing from a legal perspective, but also that we want you to have an open mind and understand that the body does have capacity to heal. We know that to be true. We also know that you need to feel comfortable with your healthcare provider, and you need to make sure that your healthcare provider is open to suggestions that you have. Because if you really sink into knowing yourself and knowing your body, there's a really good chance that you know what your body needs. So we talk about, for example, food cravings. We know that food cravings are related to the fact that our body probably needs something. Now, if you're craving wine and chocolate all the time, that may not be a specific nutrient deficiency that you're treating, but you know what I mean. If you're craving, for example, when I was pregnant, it was really funny. I was craving, for some reason, peanut butter, and I know you're not supposed to eat peanuts. Or some people think you're not supposed to eat peanuts when you're pregnant, or maybe if you, there is a thought out there that if you limit peanuts when you're pregnant, you may not be exposing the fetus to the antigens and then therefore maybe have more peanut allergies. I don't think we have any really good evidence on any of that, so please don't stop eating peanuts if you're pregnant, or start eating them if you really don't want to eat them. But I craved peanuts when I was pregnant, all that to say, and I also craved strawberries, and I'm not sure why. And I think the strawberries might have had something to do with hydration, because I was always thirsty when I was pregnant. But I looked at that as, that's really weird. Why do we crave these things? And I really think that our body kind of knows what it needs, as long as we listen to it and we help it to make healthy choices. So that was just a little fun sideline there. Sometimes we call that a squirrel. I kind of went off on a squirrel there. Welcome to our circle of support. Really, really so happy to be with you this week, and really fun for me to be able to make these weekly sessions happen, even though I'm doing so much traveling, because I really cherish the time that I sit down with you. And I know we're kind of a virtual circle, and you may be sort of sitting somewhere kind of watching this or listening to this on your own and feeling maybe a little alone or isolated, but we are truly energetically in this field together, and we are all connected in so many ways. And if nothing else, we're connected by the very fact that we are in the Empowered Women's Circle. And I feel that in my heart every time I sit down to have this conversation with you. I really do. So again, I'll go off on a little squirrel, but it's a little late here. Much later than I normally go to bed. Well, a little bit later than I normally go to bed. But I really wanted to sit and have this conversation with you. So I made sure that all of our slides were prepared, and I just decided that I was going to sit and do it, even though normally I'd be curled up in PJs by now. So I hope that you feel that same sense of that same pull to be in the circle energetically, and to sit with our weekly sessions and to just feel into the warmth and the love and the acceptance of this circle and all that it provides for each of us, including myself. So welcome to our circle of support. If you haven't, I'm going to grab my drink here. If you haven't done so already, do your 4 steps on the homepage. And join us for the closed Facebook group. We're definitely posting there, and we would love to have dialogue on that page, and that's where I'm filing all of our resources. So your anti-cancer block schedule is posted in the closed Facebook group. As I said, we are an inclusive group extending acceptance, love, and support to anyone who shows up fully. This schedule is posted. I asked for patience, and I'm going to continue to ask for patience, but it's all there and sort of outlined how we're going to go through each of the chapters, and I hope you're following along with us. To recap, there are 4 key components that we're digging into in this anti-cancer book. First is detoxifying our environment and the foods we eat and the things we put in and around our body. Dietary modification, so how to reduce cancer promoters and enhance the phytochemicals that are going to fight cancer. How to heal psychological wounds that actually contribute to the biological mechanisms, the physiology that we've talked about that promote reduction in our immune system and that fight or flight and the anxiety and the stress and all the physical changes that may contribute to the growth or the promotion of cancer. Develop a relationship with your body that stimulates your immune system. We're going to hear about your immune system today, and reduces inflammation. So what are cancer cells? Essentially, cancer cells lose their ability to die. Programmed cell death is called apoptosis. And cancer cells, for one reason or another, have gone awry because they don't die. They continue to multiply, and they continue to grow. And they ignore the overcrowding signals of the cells around them. So normally a cell would be bumping up against another cell, and it would say, oh, I'm getting too big for this space. But cancer cells ignore that message. And they tend to create an inflammatory response, and they secrete cytokines, and they secrete substances that essentially poison the tissues around them that further allows them to grow. So they create inflammation, and as they grow into tumors, they recruit blood vessels that can bring them oxygen and nutrients. So when we know these things about cancer cells, it really helps us to figure out ways to stop them from growing, to prevent them from growing, or even to provide various conceptual approaches to cancer treatments. And so that's really important for us to understand what's going on with cancer cells in general. And so how do we beat them? Well, our immune system mobilizes, and we'll see that in a little bit. Inflammation is stalled or reduced. So we know that the cancer cells are creating inflammation, which further promotes their growth. And if we can stall or reduce the inflammatory response, then the cancer cells have less promotion to continue their development. And if blood vessels refuse to supply the tumor, then it doesn't get nutrients and oxygen. It kind of outgrows itself, and it can't continue. So once a tumor is implanted, it does need some other really somewhat aggressive way of getting rid of those tumor cells, because they're not dying as they're supposed to. They're doing all the things we just mentioned. And that would be in the forms of surgery or chemotherapy or radiation, somehow removing or ablating or getting rid of those bad cells. So remember, this is chapter 4 in the Anti-Cancer book, and you can read all kinds of information around what I'm sharing. I'm just going for the main points. So learning from rare cases, and I put this book cover on the slide. It's a book called Radical Remission: The 9 Key Factors That Can Make a Real Difference, Surviving Cancer Against All Odds. And it's by Kelly A. Turner, and she's a PhD. So she's not an MD, but she was, as her PhD project, tracking people who had a remission in their cancer that wasn't otherwise medically expected. In other words, it was a cancer that was thought to be advanced, and it surprisingly went away. And she tried to figure out, from thousands and thousands of people who have had these radical remissions in their cancer, she tried to figure out what they were doing. And she she summed it up into 9 key factors. It's a really good book. But the anti-cancer book is along the same lines in that it's also going through the major things that would prevent a cancer or reduce the size of a cancer or prevent a cancer recurrence. So when I read Anti-Cancer, I sort of quickly started reading a few other books, which I'll share, and this was one of them. So I would just strongly recommend you stick with the Anti-Cancer book as we're working our way through it. But if you're really hungry for more information, this would be a fun one for you to read as well. Excuse me. So what do spontaneous or radical remissions of cancer teach us? That's what we're trying to learn here. What we're working on, as I keep emphasizing, is not so much what happens like after you get a cancer diagnosis. If that's the case, then absolutely this is hopefully valuable information. But what we're really hoping is that for people who haven't had a cancer diagnosis, we can up-level the way we're living our lives so that we can have the best chance of maybe not getting that cancer diagnosis. So what does it teach us if someone's had a radical remission? Does it teach us to believe in miracles? Perhaps it does. Does it teach us that life is unpredictable and hope is essential? Absolutely, because a lot of times I think once people get a cancer diagnosis, you know, their doctor gives them just the straight hard line black and white facts, and sometimes the numbers, the prognosis, the chance of survival, the chance of death, the chance of cure, the chance of remission, the chance of a quality of life. Those are just numbers. And we talked about that in the first session. Really, there's always a tail to the statistics. So if you didn't hear that, go back to the one of our first sessions in the anti-cancer block. There's always a tail. So there's the majority of people with that diagnosis, and then there's the people who beat the odds, the ones that are out on the tail of that curve, the prognostic curve. And you want to be in the tail, but there's always people in the tail. So you want to be one of those people that beat the odds. And one of the ways to be one of the people that beats the odds is to truly and deeply believe that you can be and that you will be one of the people that beats the odds. So it's really important. One of the hardest things that doctors do that it upsets me is that they take hope away from people. They say, well, these are the numbers. There's only a 20% chance of survival in 5 years. They say 5-year survival rate, for example. And it makes people think, well, 80% of these people are going to die. Well, maybe I'll be in the 80% because that's the majority. And it just saps people of hope. When as a physician, you have to give accurate numbers. But what we really want to do is empower people to take some control back and to feel that they have some control and to feel that there's a really good chance that they may beat the odds. And having that level of hope is, as we're going to see, part of the therapy for maintaining a healthy body and a healthy outlook and ultimately getting the best prognosis. So does a radical remission teach us to take control of our health? I think that's the biggest message. It teaches us that there is a way for a cancer that, for example, we never expected to go away, could go away. It teaches us that there is a way for somebody who may have otherwise got cancer to never get that diagnosis. There's always that hope, and that's what I hope you hear. So natural killer cells were dealt with in this chapter. What do? They detect the enemy. And the really cool thing about natural killer cells is that they detect the enemy without having to have ever seen the enemy before. So a lot of our immune cells have to have seen an antigen or a protein or an enemy, and they have to have seen it in order to develop a response against it. But natural killer cells can actually detect the enemy even if they've never seen the enemy before. and they enter the cell and they start the programmed cell death that we talked about. So they actually naturally attack a cell and kill and help to kill off a cell that shouldn't be around for one reason or another. And the macrophages, those are kind of like the the Pac-Man. Those are like the cleaning up cells. They come along behind the natural killer cells and they help to pick up all the trash. They basically envelope the trash and bring it to an area that it can be disposed of in the body. And some natural killer cells are more active and more effective than other natural killer cells. So as you saw in the book, there was a really interesting case that was studied and referenced in the Anticancer book, 77 women with breast cancer. It took the baseline level of their natural killer cell activity against the patient's own cancer cells. So it used the patient's own cancer cells. This is out of the body now in a lab. And it watched the activity or the reaction of the natural killer cells against those cancer cells. And what they found was that 12 years later, there were essentially active, really reactive and active natural killer cells. And there were other natural killer cells that were just kind of hanging around and not really aggressively attacking anything. And they followed these women for 12 years. And 12 years later, they found that 40% of the women with non-reacting natural killer cells, natural killer cells that were kind of like blah, not going after the enemy, 47% of them died. Versus the other group, 95% of women with reacting natural killer cells, they were really active against the enemy, were still alive, 95% of them. So there's something about the activity or reactivity or the health or the well-being of those natural killer cells that make them more effective killers. So it was after this research that we figured out that perhaps there was some ways that some people's immunity could be better utilized to kill off cancer cells. And we now know also that cancer needs fertile soil. So they injected carcinogens, and this is again described in the book. We're just following through chapter 4. Injected carcinogens into mice, so basically cancer-causing compounds into mice, and found that only some of them developed large tumors. Why was that? Others didn't get any tumor at all, even though they were subjected to the same cancer-causing agents. And they concluded that cancer cells grow only from, or cancer tumors grow only from cells that find a fertile terrain to lay down and start to reproduce. So this is where Dr. Servan-Schreiber came up with, or from the literature he read, I'm not going to say he was the original authors, but from the literature he read, he describes that it's possible that we have cancer cells from various carcinogens or from free radical damage or from DNA damage or cellular damage we're exposed to all the time from the things we eat or how we treat our body or the external environmental pollutants around us, that we're exposed to carcinogens and we're exposed to things that are damaging our cells all the time, and that perhaps there are cells that have gone awry, that aren't killing themselves off with apoptosis, with programmed cell death in a proper fashion, that would otherwise develop cancer if they could find fertile soil. And that maybe having a healthy body that doesn't allow there to be any areas for those cancer cells to multiply and replicate may protect us from developing cancer. So that was a concept that was developed in this chapter. And a new approach may be strengthening and mobilizing defenses that would stabilize a cancer from growing, or even better, preventing a cancer from developing in a tissue. And I should comment that there was mention in the book about the fact that there are lots of animal lovers out there, and that subjecting mice to cancers that they wouldn't otherwise have got, it may be considered inhumane. And the response to that in the book was, I thought, really compassionate, that he was suggesting that the mice were treated as good as they could possibly be, you know, euthanized cautiously, but that the very fact that they were actually helping, that they were part of the process of finding cancer treatments and cancer prevention would actually be to the benefit of not just humans later, hopefully, as we're learning from this process, but also to other animals that may benefit from the science behind some of the cancer treatments. So he is commenting on some of the studies, but I think it's important that we include the studies in this discussion that utilized animals, even though a lot of us may feel that that isn't fair treatment, and justifiably so. But oftentimes animal studies provide more information because animals are more physiologically similar to humans. And so animal studies can sometimes be more valuable for us in terms of the information they provide for our own human physiology. So I just wanted to do, there's another squirrel. I just wanted to do that little sideline, and you can read that in the book as well. So I show you this book, The Value of Believing in Yourself, the story of Louis Pasteur. This is a children's book, and I'm not sure where we got it, but my husband and I have read it to the children. I really don't know where it came from, probably from his family. We've read it to our children over and over and over and over again. We started, you know, long before they could really understand it, but it's such an incredible book that we found it was perfect for so many stages of their life. But it also has been something that continues to this day to help the children understand how the immune system works. And we describe the immune system to the kids anytime they have an injury or a cold or an illness or need medical care. We use the words from this book to describe what's happening in their body. A really good example is with immunizations and vaccinations, because that's actually what is described in the book is the first rabies vaccine that Louis Pasteur developed. And the message in this book is amazing, but I don't want to digress too far. We use the terms from this book, marching soldiers, which are attacking invisible enemies. So the invisible enemies are any antigens or pathogens or anything in the body that shouldn't be there. And the marching soldiers come along and they find the invisible enemies and they attack and they kill and they get rid of them so that the body can be healthy. And that's in a nutshell the way it's explained in this book with Louis Pasteur. So it's an interesting book. But getting back to the anti-cancer, Dr. Servan-Schreiber describes that if you keep the soldiers ready for battle, then you're really doing your immune system justice and keeping your body healthy. And how do you do that? Well, you treat them with respect. So you reduce toxins and you provide food and water for them. And you have a command center where you deal with emotions, remaining calm and positive and at peace. And you live a life and you help your soldiers live a life in service to a life worth living. And that's where living on purpose and living from a positive perspective and feeling like you're in connection and in community to others improves well-being and ultimately lifts immunity. So you can have great, strong marching soldiers if you reduce the toxins around you, if you have a healthy lifestyle, the nutrients and foods you're putting in your body, if you remain emotionally calm and in the what we used to talk about as the relaxation response that we've discussed in the Empowered Women Circle previously, and that you remain on purpose and in service to where your heart feels led, so that there's a sense of well-being and connection and contribution to the world around you. That's how you keep your immune system strong. So this chart is summarized again from the book, straight out of the book. What inhibits the immune system. In other words, it prevents the immune system from doing its job. A Western diet. So the high fat, omega-6s, trans fats, processed foods, preservatives, all of those things in a Western diet that we know not to be good for us. What would activate the immune system? What makes us stronger? What gives our marching soldiers more pedal to the metal? Mediterranean diet, Indian, Asian cuisine, all those wonderful antioxidants, vegetables, dark colors, lean proteins. What inhibits the immune system? Persistent anger and despair. You know how it feels when you feel upset about something or you're mad at somebody. There's that tension inside of you. That tension inside of you is actual physiology that's occurring. So cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, all these things flying around, they're not good for your cells. You need to calm. And so activate your immune system with some serenity and joy, with that at least 5 minutes a day of relaxation, if not longer, and in the form of meditation or yoga or Tai Chi or repetitive activity like walking or swimming, just something that's going to allow your body to come into a relaxation response. The immune system is inhibited by social isolation. So being on your own, feeling alone, feeling unheard, feeling isolated, but it's activated by having support from family and friends. It's inhibited by a denial of one's true identity. So that sense of living kind of hidden away and not allowing people to see who you really are. And it's activated by a feeling of acceptance and a feeling of allowing the true you to come out. It's inhibited by a sedentary lifestyle, and it's activated by regular physical activity. So these are the things that we are working around and finding ways to implement in our life in a sustainable way that makes us feel healthy and alive and on purpose and in connection with each other. So as we continue through the anti-cancer block, really keeping in mind that all of those things that really flow through us are in many ways strengthening our immune system and making us healthier and stronger. It's beautiful when you think about it. So what do we want to aim for? We're going to get into this in much greater detail, but this is from a previous slide that we talked about a study that Dr. Ornish did. But you want to aim for a Mediterranean diet, so high plant focus, lots of vegetables, low animal fats and proteins, high quality supplements. You got to get your vitamin D, you got to get your omega-3s, you got to get your antioxidants. You really have to make sure that you're getting all of those nutrients into your body every day. Physical exercise, 30 minutes, 6 times a week, that's quite aggressive to aim for, and Marcia would certainly have you work slowly up, little by little by little, but making sure you're getting your body moving. Stress management, yoga, breathing, imagery, progressive relaxation, something that's going to bring you into the relaxation response. Support group or social interaction, at least an hour a week. So we're here together on Thursdays, and we have our live event coming up December 13th. Don't forget to write that on your calendar, December 13th, 6:30 to 8:30 Central Time. You should have already received multiple invites in your inbox. If you haven't, please let me know. And bring your friends along. We'll have that hour or 2 hours of social interaction, that time to get together, that time to reflect on 2017 and plan ahead to 2018. I'm so excited about that event. I really, really am. Bring all your friends. It's going to be awesome. And connection, a sense of connection to loved ones, connection to our women's circle. That creates can you feel it? I can feel it. Just that warm feeling of being with people who don't judge and who accept and who love and who care. That's what we're doing in our Empowered Women's Circle. So who's the most favorite person on your list this year for Christmas? This is kind of a trick question. I've asked this question before, but who is the most important person in your life? Someone asked me that once. You probably heard me tell this story. Someone asked me that once, and I had a really hard time flying through my head. I had like my husband, my children, my mom, my family, my brothers, my best friend. Like, I didn't know. And the person who asked me said, "What about you?" I was like, "Oh, I didn't even think about me." But of course, we have to be the most important person in our own life. Everything radiates out from our ability to put first intention on ourselves. We can be so much better at everything we do if we have our first intention on ourselves. So you are your most favorite person on your list. And so for your most favorite person on your list, you should be considering and continuing to get, if you're already on track, your ID nutrition for 2018. Set up your scheduled delivery, get on your high quality supplements that are personalized for you. Make this the gift for yourself this upcoming year. And this is an essential step in this process of getting life on track and being the healthiest, most vital and vibrant version of yourself that you possibly can. And every one of your wellness leaders can walk you through how to do that and how to make sure you get the right nutrients in that regime. So next week we're gonna get together with Dr. Cooper. Finally, I know she's already got her chapters completed and she's really excited to get together with us. It just didn't work out exactly for this week, but we're ready to do chapter 3 and chapter 5. And then after that, I'm going to complete chapter 4. And I just want to say a little tidbit here. December 21st is the winter solstice. It's the shortest day, the longest night of the year. After December 21st, every day thereafter starts to get a little bit longer. So it marks a very important seasonal day. It marks a very important day for a lot of our ancestors and a lot of tribes and a lot of ceremonial native culture. It's a very, very important day energetically in the universe. And I want to just draw attention to that being the winter solstice. I haven't decided how else I'm going to bring the winter solstice, the shift in energy that comes from hitting that shortest day and that longest night. It really marks a time that ceremonially makes a difference for a lot of people in a lot of cultures. And I'd like to bring more of that to you, but I'm just thinking about how to do that. Is there anyone left on your Christmas list? I know there's plenty on mine. And in fact, I've packed away a few of these little holiday packs for a couple people on my list. But if you have anybody left on your list, I just want to share with you that ID Life has many options for many people on your list. So we have in ID Life a really awesome skincare line. And last year I bought that for pretty much all of the women on my Christmas list. A really beautiful cleanser, day moisturizer, night moisturizer, anti-aging formula. And it works really well for my preteen girls as well. So it's a really great scientifically backed skincare line. And what you're seeing on the slide, there's a new ID Life Holiday Survival Pack. And that really comes in around $10 for that pack. It's got some hydrate and some energy in it. It's packaged in a really cool way that will allow you to give it as gifts to people and maybe stocking stuffers, those kinds of things. And the ID Life Experience Kit puts the experience products, so the shake and the hydrate and the sleep strips, together in a nice little zip top bag that you could take to go with you to the gym or on trips. I have some in my suitcase. So if there's anybody left on your list, so many amazing gift ideas at ID Life. And remember, on the December 13th event, we're having you come with a proof of purchase from one of your wellness leaders, ID Life. So if you haven't bought anything, this is a perfect time to look at the people on your list and buy some holiday gifts And then you'll have your proof of purchase when you come and hang out with us on December 13th. So until I see you again, let your light shine. Love you, ladies. I'm going to go to sleep now. Good night.